inspiring them to develop themselves uniquely to be their best for others, because this is a really beautiful ripple effect. And I think if we all think about it this way as serving others, I want to hear what drives you on this, Mark.
I'm driven by the inner man because I know that I'm here for one reason only, and that is to serve. And the way we think to serve best is to ask. And we ask ourselves, we ask others, ask God. There's only three channels, right? You said faith. So when I'm bankrupt and upside down, I said to God, okay, God, what does he want me to do? God doesn't answer. He said the opposite to me in my inner being and said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a professional speaker and talk to people that care about things that matter, make a life-changing difference. Pages together, mom, dad, kids, grandkids, just 10
Oh,
minutes when my grandkids are staying at our house. That's all we do. We shut off the TV, we shut off no media, no music, just 10 minutes reading, and then we all talk about whatever we just read and thought about.
that's a beautiful
And it
thing to do.
changes your life.
Well, and that's another thing too, is the sense of unity, family. I love your suggestion there, reading together and then discussing things, opening up conversation. Still have free will. I always go back to free will. I'm not going to
You
blame
got to
anybody
direct
for
your
anything.
free will. The great question, Carl. You got to direct your free will. And when I went bankrupt, it was because I was reading all the bad news fit to print. I couldn't get enough bad TV. And what you got to do is you got to do a hiatus on negativity and say, look, I'll watch the review shows on Sunday morning with whoever, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's Fahi or Maria, whatever you want to do, but close down and limit yourself to 1 hour. But make sure your first input in the morning is some positive, uplifting book, audio, or music. And then last thing before you go to sleep, the first thing you ask is, how do you know how do you get your energy to go to 100% peak? Here's what happens. We teach in our book, Ask, right there, Ask, Bridge to Redeemer's Destiny, 101 times before you go to sleep. After the dogs have stopped barking, the kids are put.
Hello, listeners. Thanks so much for tuning into Your Health Matters. My name is Carl Sterling, and as always, I'm just thrilled to be your host. We're going to get right into the meat and potatoes of today's show with a very, very special guest. Today, we are joined by the one and the only Mark Victor Hansen. He is internationally renowned as a motivational speaker, a best-selling author. A lot of you probably know about him from the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. Well, I got to tell you, it's an honor to have him here. He's inspired millions of people in his teachings on success, entrepreneurship, and the power of asking, of which I have a really great story to tell you personally from one of your books. In fact, your latest book, if I'm correct, is Ask, the bridge from your dreams to your destiny, a very powerful book. Explores how we can embrace the power of asking to help transform our life. Yes, there it is. For those who are listening, go to YouTube, carlsterling.net, check it out, but you're going to see the cover right here. Mr. Hansen, it's great to have you here, man. How's it going?
Mark, Mark, let's go on a first name
Oh, okay.
basis.
All right. All right. Mark, it's great to have you. How you doing today?
Uh, Beyond spectacular. How's that? I mean it. My life is, you're supposed to have a fullness of life. My life is so full, so dynamic. So I'm married to the goddess of exquisiteness. I'm doing the work that I love, which is all these books. I'm part of businesses that matter and churches that are impacting lives and changing. I'm not a minister, but I help a lot of ministers in a lot of ways.
I just love that. I want to start off with a little story.
Sure.
So, right up here in my bookshelf, I have a bunch of books. One of them is Dare to Win.
Yep. I
It
wrote that
goes
a long time ago.
that
Yep.
goes way back, right?
Yeah, that was one of the earliest. That was probably my fourth book or so. Yeah, I wrote it, and then Jack came in and just kissed it hello.
Okay, and then here's a story. Okay, I got this book probably about 30 years ago, maybe. I don't know the copyright when
Yeah,
it
yeah,
came out, but The Aladdin Factor. So here's
exactly.
my story. I'm reading this book. It's all about asking. And I'm not the kind of guy to go and ask for stuff from this perspective of, let's say, oh, I deserve this or I'm entitled. No, I want it to be something that will not hurt another person, maybe help another person. Maybe we, because it ain't about me, it's about we. Maybe we can do something together. So, well, I asked you to be on this show, and here you are. If I didn't ask, you wouldn't be here. So, anyways, I read this book. I have an investment property. I'm upside down after owning it about 6, 7 years. Things went like the market, the neighborhood. I read the book, and then I wrote a letter to the mortgage holder who was a small firm in Florida. I said, I got a problem. I owe you $74,000, but the house is worth about 50. I can't come out of pocket. I'm going to sell it. And he's like, well, geez, when I bought this paper off of somebody else, I made a ton of money. We've got room. I'll tell you what, if you just we'll renegotiate right here. I'm going to knock it down. I'll take $21,000 off the principal, have your lawyer write up $53,000 piece of paper, a mortgage, done deal. Bingo. Just like that, by asking, I saved $21,000. So then, after it's all said and done and my payments are lower and I can finally get out of this thing, I write you a letter. You write me back and say, bravo, that's great. So I still have that postcard home. It changed really how I look at everything. I appreciate that.
Two things. One is, as you said, my wife and I wrote a book called Ask, The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. The first story, The Fable of Michaela, we're now making into a movie, and we're finishing the movie script as my wife's in the other office in our home here, finishing it right this minute. And we got a big money offer, so it's fine. It's going to be bigger than Harry Potter, because that was our dream, as we asked. And we
Beautiful.
say the most powerful thing you can do in the world is learn to ask. Now, everybody knows the spiritual line from the master, ask and you shall receive, but no one ever taught anyone how to do it. Now, where did the book you come from? When Jack and I got turned down 144 times for chicken soup, they all said, hit the road, Jack. And I said, I'm a nice guy. Do you like me? No, I'm joking. Jack's just a wonderful human being and my great friend still, always, and a genius, third in his class at Harvard, all that good stuff. But the point is, nobody wanted it, but and at the same time, like you said, I wrote Dare to Win, and then we're going to do 14 books: Dare to Win, Dare to Lose, all the way to Dare to Know
Oh,
God,
wow.
and one was Dare to Ask, and we sold it to Berkeley. They go at a contract and they said, we want you to do all 14, but we'll start with Dare to Win. And all of a sudden, we sold 1.5 million in a year and a half, and then 5 million. They immediately call up Berkeley, and I haven't heard from them now in 3 years, right? And they said, you got to finish that book, Dare to Ask. I go into Jack's office, and by this time we're doing 2 books a year. We've gone from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 12. And because when you're rocking, the S curve in business is when you start to go up, you got to have the next product before the last one exhausts and peaks out.
Sure.
And I thought, wow. I go into Jack's office and said, Jack, we've got to write this, or she said she's going to sue our millions away from us. And he said, well, what are you going to do? I said, Jack, I said, it isn't a lawsuit against Mark Victor Hansen. It's a lawsuit against Mark and Jack Canfield. He said, no. I said, what are you going to do about it? I said, well, I'm going to interview the world's best askers, which is what I did for Aladdin Factor. And we didn't know the movie Aladdin Factor was coming out at the same time
Oh,
with Robin Williams, who's one of my heroes. But I'm telling you that if you ask every day, I believe in God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, but I happen to believe in God. There are probably some people out there that are agnostic, atheistic. They believe in something or believe in nothing, I guess. But is it, if you believe in something, you say, bless me a whole lot with this. And I want to be blessed with that whole book series. And now I've written 391 books personally. And now we own a
that's
publishing
unbelievable.
company that last year we had 81 books become #1 on Amazon. It's like a mind blower, because you got to ask for blessings. And that's one. And two is, I got to bless you, Carl, which I'm blessing you because you asked me to be in the show. I'm my great honor, of course, but we're blessing whoever's listening. You can't keep getting blessings unless you're a blessing to somebody else. Did you know that?
Mm. Well, not in those words, but it's starting to feel that way over the past years when I'm finally feeling like, late bloomer, born backwards, feet first, upside down, butt in the air, sunny side up. ADHD and low IQ way back. They thought I was, well, anyways, the bottom line is I might be a late bloomer, but this stuff all ties in and makes so much sense.
I
All of
want
it.
to talk about you being a late bloomer because I'm studying with my friend again, who I've been friends with 40 years, Dr. John DeMartini, who is also everything you just said about you, and upside down dyslexic,
It's true.
Asperger's, all that. And what he and I teach is the same thing: is that the mind is neuroplasticity. So he was taught by Dr. Paul Bragg. Say to yourself, "I'm a genius." and I'm applying my genius. And you say it in the morning, noon, and night, and before you go to sleep. And pretty soon your brain starts to wake up. You get rid of dyslexia, you get rid of all that stuff. And John now has read 31,000 books, has mastered 300 subjects, and is one of the great teachers who's talked to a billion people around the world. And is a very close friend of mine. I mean, I've had him on a lot of shows. We've been on a lot of shows together around the world. And it keeps getting better, but we're trying to, and we're both, all three of us, now you are included in our net, are making it better for everybody else because the goal is to make everybody better off and no one worse off for the first time in history.
Exactly.
Because there's fundamental abundance.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So, there's, we're going to continue down this road. We actually have to go to a break in about a minute. Um, One of the people who inspired me a whole lot, I know you were good friends with him. Rumor has it you might have done a eulogy at his funeral, was Bob Proctor.
Bob and I own two companies together. Not only do his eulogy, he wrote the foreword to the last book he wrote a foreword to, which I have right here,
Yes.
is about Reverend Ike, the guy who got me out of poverty, the man of great influence and affluence, actually.
I love that book.
And after he died, his wife came to me and said, "Hey, you got to write his biography." And I said, "I've never written one, but you're hired." Anyhow, long story short, Bob wrote the foreword. Bob calls me the night before he dies, and I said, "What is it?" Because I said I'd do anything for Bob. I mean, he was 87 and in great shape, but the doctors, yeah, hit him, and he said, "I'm taking the Concorde to heaven." Isn't that the best line?
Oh my God. Only Bob would think of that. Well, let's hold that thought. Folks, we're with Mark Victor Hansen today. This is just such an honor. I'm so excited to have you here, Mark. And we're going to go out. You're listening to Your Health Matters here on News Radio 570 WSYR, also on 106.9 FM on the iHeart Network. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Okay.
I love
All
this
right.
show.
We're back with Mark Victor Hansen. Well, that's really interesting. I met Bob Proctor a couple times. First in Dallas, spent a couple days at a workshop with him and went up. We were talking one-on-one afterwards, drinking coffee, talking about psychometry, which I had never heard of until about 30 years ago. Then I hit his booth at the vendor arena. I bought everything he had, the whole 12
Thank
video
you.
cassettes. Oh, Born Rich. I mean, I still have those. Those changed my life too. All these influences come in and they converge and everything's connected. It's like we're all connected somehow. And in the movie The Secret and all that, a lot of people, that's controversial in some ways to certain people, but bottom line is if we put out a positive vibe like you do and I'm working on, things get better. People seem to come towards you and be around you who are more positive. I mean, how does that work? It's magical in a way.
Es- Esther Hicks and Jerry came. It's a mind blower. I love doing stories. So I'm running a big office, and I got, we're doing $100 million company called Enlightened Millionaire Institute, based on my book One Minute Millionaire, and I did with Bob Allen. And I had 397 employees, and my secretary comes running in and says, "There's somebody downstairs that says you got to meet him." I said, "Oh man, this is a day that I haven't got any time to meet anyone else. Who is it?" And said, "Esther and Jerry Hicks." I said, "Hold on. I got goosebumps now." And I said, "Let me go down." Long story short, we're going to lunch. And they said, "Bob Proctor, like you said." And I said, "Bob's one of my best friends. I mean, he stayed at my house multiple times. I've stayed at his house on Proctor Lane up in Toronto multiple times. We've
Mhm.
owned two major companies together that made millions together, had a great time, talked all over Asia together." I said, "Yeah, I can call him." So I called up Bob. I said, "Bob, I'm not here alone. I'm with Jerry and Esther Hicks. They want to say hello to you." And it was like, and so the point is, the word that she says everything, the better it gets, Esther does, the better it gets, right? When
Yeah.
she's talking through the pure spirit of the universe. And it's so fascinating because that's true. And the worse it gets, the worse it gets. You got to have the corollary. Polarity is one of the things that Bob taught you in the universe.
Yeah.
There's always equal and opposite. But I meditate on the better it gets, the better it gets, because I want to see how good it can get, because there's no limit to peak. Because I have, when I do these audiences like I do all over the world, I have everyone make the infinity sign. I say, look, the infinity sign is because you're infinite. And once you say it and you start saying to yourself, "I'm infinite," and back to that thing, I'm infinite. And my teacher in graduate school was Buckminster Fuller, the smartest guy of the last century. Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller invented geodesic domes and all that good stuff. Bucky says we're all born geniuses. Then we get unplugged going through life. So I tell the audience, it looks silly, but pretend your fingers are electric plugs, plug back in. and you start saying, I'm a genius and I'm applying my genius. I'm applying my
Yeah.
wisdom. I mean, it just, you can't miss with this.
I love that. There's a great photo of you and Buckminster together. You were 21. I saw it last week. I was looking, just going through photos, and oh my gosh, he knew him. That's pretty cool.
I had long hair then and all
You
that. I
did,
mean,
yeah.
it
I
turns
had
out
any
that,
hair some day ago. Um, well, it's interesting because Bob Proctor, you were talking about polarity. I remember in Toronto, right after it was three slamming days, and Bob like it hit you really hard right around 11 p.m. because we were all dead tired at that point, and he just started nailing us like with all these things that hitting hard, and then like, oh man, how can I take in any more? But he said some things very powerfully right by my table. He says, you can't have a front without a back, a top without a bottom, an in without an out, and an up without a down. And he went through this and he illustrated how important polarity is and how when we do the thing, whatever the thing is, interchangeable, you get the energy to do the thing. And I've actually, since that day, I have lived by that. And that includes exercise, folks. By the way, this is Your Health Matters. We talk about health a lot. If you get moving, you're going to get the energy to get moving and keep moving. That's how it works. So, anyways, I had to plug that in. So, let's talk about this in terms of we talk about this vibration, energy, law of attraction. We talk about things get better. You attract a certain type of person tends to get attracted to you, let's say, or me, because of maybe what we're putting out there and our attitude, our security, our insecurities. Can we dig a little bit more into that and talk about how that relates to our, let's say, our health, but in an overall scope, not just our physical health, but quality of life? That
well,
could be
even,
a type of health.
yeah, psychic health and relationship health, and whoever you're going to have in your mated relationships critical. So I teach, you got to really know what you want. You got to ask yourself before you go to sleep 101 times, God, what do I really want? And then the next morning, write it all up and write down 10 new goals every day. But the minute you put it in writing, it comes true. So I went through a painful, expensive, extraordinary divorce. And I was single for a long time. And I wrote down 267 things I needed in my ideal wife. I did it in a 20th anniversary issue of Chicken Soup. And I wrote down all
Ah,
these cool things that were impossible to have in a woman. But I had to be those things because
okay.
Carl, most people are superficial with the relationship. I want me a hot babe or eye candy from a man's
Yeah,
point of view. And from a woman's point of view, I
sure.
want him tall, dark, handsome, and rich,
Yeah,
right?
right. Sure.
But I wrote down number 46. I want to create superior memories. I want to be able to talk forever through the decades with her. I want us both to live in ideas. I want her to have her own wealth and, not marry me for my wallet. I tried that once. That doesn't work. She's got to be sophisticated on her own. She has to have a nurturing spirit and the negatives. She's got to be a non-smoker. I'm not kissing an ashtray, honey. I just ain't going to happen.
Yeah, right.
You ain't going to get smoked around me. A non-alcoholic, non-drug user. She's got to be charitable on her own, have great etiquette, right? And you write down all these cool things, and you can get them out of that 20th anniversary issue, and it just of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And all I'm doing is trying to inspire people because most people don't have enough goals.
Yeah.
In other words, the mind is teleological, whether you want it to be or not. It's goal setting and goal getting, right? I'm either going to get up in the morning and I'm going to feel great, and you tell yourself that, or I'm going to stay in bed and sleep this day in, and I'm going to miss work, and I'm going to blow off my life, and I'm not disciplined, and I don't care. But I would rather have you be super ambitious, absolutely disciplined, passionately on purpose, because I just won the Happiness Hall of Fame award, and they asked me if you had a choice of happiness or meaning. I said, well, that's obvious. You got to have meaning so you can be happy. The meaning I get is I love the communications I do. I love whether it's in write or seminar or podcasts like this or radio shows like this. And then I also love talking to a live audience, and I can synchronize people. I can hear what people really need in just a minute and say, this is who I think you got to get with. And if I can and want to and like them and trust them, I get them with whoever they need to get to that fast.
Wow, I love that. You know what I love is how you said to live, make your day or live passionately on purpose. Because, it's easy to go into
Why
victim.
else would you want to live? I
Yeah,
want to be
it's easy to go
boring,
into a
dull, and
victim mentality. I don't think I've ever felt like I was a victim. However, I know a lot of people who
good.
do. And I can't say that I haven't come close. In my previous life, when I was obese and drinking way too much, eating too much, not moving, before I got into any of the health stuff that I do. Um, I just knew that I wasn't comfortable in my own skin with who I was, what I was doing, how I was living. And so, it's like this power we have as humans just blows my mind, the power of free will. We all have bad days. And I mean, my mom just passed away 5 days ago. And I say this
Sorry.
with a lot of love in my heart for my mom. I was holding her in my arms when she died last Friday. Now, a lot of listeners already know this because
Very
they've
nice.
heard the show already. We had the best moments last week, last hours of days of her life. We had the most beautiful moments. I have sobbed and I have sobbed and I have sobbed. And I feel really good because part of it is no disrespect to mom. She wouldn't want me feeling bad. Plus, she knew I could get up and
Right.
decide to have a good day. So we have to go to a break, actually. This is perfect time to take it out and go to break. We'll come back. We're with Mark Victor Hansen. This is exciting. All right, we're back and we're talking with Mark Victor Hansen. So, Mark, it's this power of free will is something I learned. I have to say, I learned that from probably Bob Proctor. He illustrated, and in your books, of course, there's so much about making the choices, even the choices and thoughts. And I think it might be easier said than done sometimes, but doesn't it kind of become a habit after a while? Can you create a habit of thinking differently?
Let's do it this way. I look, if I could mandate it on your behalf, I would encourage you to think positively. Now, there's a lot of times you can't think positively. If you have a car crash and you feel trashed and beat up and hurt and broken, right? That's it. But pain is the given, suffering is optional, meaning that if you change your thinking, you change your life. And it is tautological, meaning self-evident, but at the same token, most people have never decided to take charge of the thinking, which controls their beliefs, which controls their action, which controls their results. So once you take charge of your thinking and you say, hey, wait a second. Remember, I started 50 years ago. I'm bankrupt. I'm upside down for $2 million. I gone bankrupt so fast. I had to check a book out of the biggest library in the world, New York Public Library. I was living in New York and loved it, but I had to go bankrupt by yourself. Now I can laugh and
Oh,
say how
wow.
tragic it was. But with the tragic to the magic was I had to get out of what I shouldn't be doing and into what I should be doing, which is what I'm doing. So, I ended up writing my first little book, talking at 4 insurance talks a day, and only Tony Robbins and I did that many talks a day, and talked to. And anyhow, they said, "Man, those stories are so good. Do you have them in a book?" So the first book I wrote, self-published, Stand Up, Speak Out, and Win. I sold 20,000 copies at $10 each. Man, that's $200,000. Well, back in 1974, babe, that is like $2 million. I
That's a lot of
was
money.
smoking again,
Yeah.
right? And a dumbass me, I didn't do anything for 5 years writing books. I mean, and now, I can't. Right now, I'm in the highest, most elevated state at age 76 years young because I'm going to be 127 with option for renewal
I
of my
love
life.
I love
Because
it. I love it. Seriously.
yeah, yeah. Well, by the way, the Bible says Genesis 6:3, you're supposed to do a minimum of 120 years. So I'm a maximalist, not a minimalist. So I said, look, back to your question about health. If you have a high quality of health, and mine is extremely good, then you want a high quality of life. If you got a crummy quality of life, why would you want to live another minute? Right? Let yourself
Yeah.
go. Because
Yeah.
back to free will, you also choose when you're going to die. But I'm going to put in one pitch because I'm spokesperson of the Red Cross again. I've raised a lot of money for them, a lot of blood for them. When you die, give away all the blood. If you just make that little conscious decision, because you got 9 pints of blood, when you're sure you're dead, whether you get cremated or whether you get buried, you don't need your blood. And if you give it to the Red Cross, every pint of blood saves at least 3 lives. If they do platelets, 9 lives. You're giving what they call the gift of life, the tissue of life,
Wow.
and it'll make your life better because the greatest living comes out of the greatest giving.
That's a beautiful statement right there. Yeah. You have,
I
I
know I
tell
wrote a
you,
whole book called
folks, you got to
Magic
go
of
buy
Giving.
all 391 books. I probably have about 15 of your books, from Aladdin
So
Factor to
good. Then my kids will
Transformative.
have shoes of my grandkids. Thank you all.
Yeah.
By the
Um,
way, I follow authors all the time. So what my dear new friend Carl is saying is true. find somebody that you resonate with. Back to the earlier thing he said in the last show, if you're still were with us then, or go back and listen to this on wherever you're going to listen to it on YouTube or at iHeart archive. If somebody resonates with you, drink in their whole stuff. It's called getting in entrainment, ENTR, entrainment, right?
Yes.
And entrainment means you got entrained with Bob Proctor, you're entrained with me, I'm entrained with you. And what happens is that energetic goes out. And then if you write your goals and add 10 new goals every day and keep a journal, a diary. And I wrote a whole book called Future Diary. It's behind me somewhere here. Anyhow, it is amazing. This stuff compounds and it comes through because different goals have different gestation rate. A chick egg, 22 days, a human 9 months, and an elephant takes 2 years. But the point is, I'm getting residual goals now of stuff I wanted to do 50 years ago, and it's all inundating because if you compound all the thoughts in your brain, and every book opens up a new app, so to speak, in your mind,
Yeah.
and you're born rich, like Bob Proctor's book, which I wrote the
Yeah.
forward to. You're born with whatever 18 billion or trillion brain cells, and they can't come to work until you make the decision. So subconscious makes a provision.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really interesting. That word entrained or entrainment, folks, you've been listening to me for a while, a lot of you. Thanks you for putting us at the top, ranking wise, too, by the way. You've heard me talk about entrainment in various ways. So, Mark, you're making me look a lot smarter than I actually am. But entrainment, folks, Mark just said it. It's so important. It's so important. So, let's talk. So something happens. Something happens when we write. Now, I'm gonna put in this little thing. If I type, it's not the same as if I write. There's something for me, and I don't know if there's any science behind this, and I never looked it up. When I write a statement or a goal or whatever, it's a lot different. First of all, I remember it better than if I type it. But what's happening
Good.
to us when we're writing things down? Because this is a special whatever that helps us immensely.
Well, first of all, I do both. But I'm with you 100%. But I write all my goals. My goals are handwritten. Books often we handwrite it and we type it, or I get a staff or to type it. And rarely do I just dictate it. Although everything I do is original and everything I do is, I do not use, we use AI to market stuff, but we don't use AI to write my books or Mark Victor Hansen Library, the fastest growing ghostwriting publishing company. We want to help everybody ghostwrite their fiction, nonfiction book, or biography. And regular books are 30,000. Fiction book biographies are like 200,000. We're doing the biggest biographies on the planet now that need to get done that no major house would take. And all these people call me, like John Paul DeJoria, the guy with 37,000 Paul Mitchell beauty salons in 132 countries, the guy who feeds 40,000 people a night in Austin, the guy who turned around Barbuda, the island, by after the hurricane by making it hurricane proof with the top ichthyologist, fish doctor, brought back 100% employment. The guy that went to Mali, Africa, and said to the king, what's wrong? He said, the people are starving. He said, what do you need? Wells. He paid personally, no request, 44 water wells. They now grow so much food, they feed 5 countries around Mali, West
Wow.
Africa. The point is, one of us that makes a decision. Here's a guy that was homeless twice, and you never heard his story. Most people never heard his story. A book doesn't come out until February. It's called Success Without Sharing is Failure. And he
Oh,
called me
wow.
up and he said, hey, Mark, you've told me now for 30 years, we've been best friends, that I ought to write a book. I'm going to send it to you. And he had 19 pages. I said, hey, JP, John Paul DeJoria, JP, man, I love you, but you got to let me interview you. We're going to make it a real book.
Okay.
19 pages isn't a book. We
Yeah,
need
really.
140 to 200. And he said, tell me what I owe you. And I told him, and he sent a check. The point is, we're doing all those books. We do impact stories that'll change your life. And that's all the Bible is a bunch of impact stories by 66 authors that change your life. Now the big word is exegesis. If you read it and then understand the interpretation of it, which is one of the masterpieces of Bob Proctor, he would tell you a spiritual line and then tell you what it meant. And you went, now I get it. You roll away the stone. You roll away
Right.
what isn't working in your life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's powerful. Folks, we're going to head out for a break. When we come back, we'll continue with Mark Victor Hansen talking more about just how to live a more fulfilling life. All right, we're back. This is Your Health Matters. We are with Mark Victor Hansen today. So, I remember this book, Dare to Win, which I just pulled off the shelf to show to somebody the other day. Said you got to read this. I have a whole bunch. Oh, so when I read a book, by the way, and any books I have that I love, like all of your books that I have, they're all highlighted because I draw, I highlight, I make notes, and then I write everything out. Dare to Win, uh, set me up on this journey of thinking differently. And so then there's the Aladdin factor, and there's chicken soup for the soul, and all these are the 1 Minute Millionaire. Yeah. Oh yeah, Dare to Win. I love that.
This is the
Oh, I've
original
got
copy of Dare to Win, which I wrote. Yeah, before Jack and I got with Berkeley Press, and then they said they wanted to have Jack hand my name on it because we were the best-selling authors. We had number one and number two book, and I'm the only guy. There you go. That's a little paperback book, yeah, which sold like 3.6 million. Whoops, it's
can't
going in and
really
out
see
of
it because I
black as
have
I.
it blocked. There it is. There
Oh,
it
there you
is.
go. Right,
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
that's a little paperback, but wow, it
We're
it,
very
it really
thankful for that.
pardon me.
We're very
But
thankful for that book.
oh, it's a great book. I love it so much. But
Thank you.
I'm talking about this book here because it was an early one for me early on. I was probably in my early 30s. I don't know, late 20s. I'm 63, so whatever. It's over 30 years ago I got it. And it seems to me like these days there's a big need for a more positive state of mind and emotions, mental health, certainly physical health. And we already know that. We talk about that every week. Everybody knows who listens. We're talking about it every week. But social media is something that a lot of people complain about, but they're complaining about it while they're on it. Nothing funnier than me, or more amusing, not even funny, about complaining about Facebook while you're on Facebook complaining about it. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Well, I don't like it when they post these things. Well, then don't look. So I have this thing that I do. Doesn't mean I'm better than anybody, but I really choose carefully what I look at because I don't have time to look at a whole lot of stuff on social media. But there is a lot of negativity out there, and it seems like, especially the political arena, that's a whole thing. Wherever anybody stands, it's still a horrible arena in some ways, right? We have
Right.
this need. We need so much for healing of the mind and the souls, and for people to come together. That's another thing that, a reason that I wanted to have you join me, because you have this magic ability from the moment I was on a conference call with you one day. We were all muted and you were talking, but it's like the moment you come on, man, this is all you can't, if you're down, Mark's going to bring you up. And how do you do that? How the heck do you do that, Mark? It's
First of all,
amazing what you do. You
you
pulled
you
me out
did
of
a
a rut.
two-part question.
Yeah, I actually didn't even ask the
Well, thank
question I
you.
was going to
I love
answer,
it.
that
You
I was
love
going to
it.
ask, but here we go.
But first of all, everyone needs to read 10 pages a day of a self-help action book because there's an academic education, and a lot of people get it and say, I'll never open another book. Then there's a self-help action education, which is, I'm an addict. I've read over or kissed the top of at least 50,000 books in my library here
Yeah.
in my office. And more, but and I haven't read every word, but and highlighted. But if you read 10 pages or more a day of something positive, uplifting, inspiring, you're going to transform your life. Now, if you can't read, you're dyslexic, you're whatever, you're Asperger's, you're a slow reader, read it in audio.
Yeah,
All my
exactly.
stuff, we audio, and it's all done when I'm at my high energy best. And I want you to listen not only to my stuff, but I'll tell you all the other people's, like I mentioned earlier, John DeMartini or Bob Proctor. These are things that'll change your life. They'll save your life. They'll make your life. They'll give you life because you're supposed to have life everlasting. Because remember, spirit is eternal. Spirit runs the mental, which runs the physical, which runs your results. So if that's true, and I think it's true, and I hope you'll argue it with yourself. I would argue with you if you were physically with me, some of you all listening. But let's say that it's true. And in a spiritual world, there's the infinite. And if you learn how to close your outer eyes, go to the inner spaces of your mind, go on the stage of your imagination, see yourself being what you want to be, doing what you want to do, having what you want to have, traveling like you want to travel, being with the people you want to be with. Like I told Carl before I got here, I was invited at the last minute to a lunch with my friend Rick Warren, Saddleback Church, the guy who wrote Purpose Driven Life, and
Hmm.
there's thousands of people in the audience. But I'm
Great
sort of
book.
a hoot in Arizona. I live in Scottsdale, and it was packed. But I'm at the front table and with a who's who, and it's sort of astounding. I remember I've come from nowhere. My parents were illiterate Danish people, not because they were stupid, but because they came during the Depression and there's no ESL, English as a second language. I was in remedial reading for 6 years, from first grade to sixth grade,
Yeah.
because I had language difficulty. Not because I'm stupid. Obviously, I've written more books than anybody, I think. Numerically, I can't prove that, but I'm told that's true. And Guinness Book of Records thinks it's true. So God bless Guinness Book of Records.
Yeah,
The point
right.
is,
Sure. Yeah.
every one of you knows you got to read to lead. You got to read to succeed. And look at the greatest people in the world. Elon Musk says, if I'm not building something like Tesla or SpaceX or, Neuralink or something, I read 60 hours a week. You go, holy smoly. The
Yeah.
greatest investor, Warren Buffett, 5 hours a day. Now, I read sometimes 16 to 18 hours a day, but it just is, and it's amazing. And I love it. And my mind is full of models. So you can't ask me about anything that I don't know something, right? And it makes life rich, full, meaningful, whether it's my kids, grandkids, relatives,
Yeah.
clients, staff, whatever.
Well, yeah. So that actually directly answered the question that I indirectly was going to ask that I never asked. And the question was, how do we come around to this? What are things we can do to help, let's say society in general, certain individuals, certain families, groups of people that are just stuck in this rut? And I have to say, one of the things for me first is my faith. Okay. Yes, and I go to mass every Sunday and
Thank
I
you.
love my faith and it's beautiful. But also
Great.
it's you have to do your own work too, right? We have to put ourselves out there. So for me, I am very fortunate to have started a business here, or my neuromotor training clinic, where we do a lot with restoring movement, memory, cognition, get people to stay upright, fall down
I
less,
saw
improve
the
quality of
movie
life.
video of it. It's great.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I saw your whole video, but I saw your whole
Oh,
video
thank
of
you.
that beautiful
Oh,
clinic,
wow.
and God
Well,
bless you. And yeah, it's wonderful, and I'll visit sometime. But the point is, every family's got to take 10, read 10 pages together. Mom, dad, kids, grandkids. Just 10
oh,
minutes. When my grandkids are staying at our house, that's all we do. We shut off the TV, we shut off no media, no music, just 10 minutes reading, and then we all talk about whatever we just read and thought about.
that's a beautiful
And it
thing to do.
changes your life.
Well, and that's another thing too, is the sense of unity, family. Here we have a lot of widows who come in, right? It just so happens we had one
Yep.
widower, but he's gone for a little while. He'll be back. The thing is, they live alone. A lot of them, they're lonely. They're not, they're still active. They come here. We have a community. This has turned into community. I'm so happy. But we can do this in a lot of different ways in our lives. I love your suggestion there, reading together and then discussing things, opening up conversation. With that said, folks, these radio minutes go so quickly. And I have good news. We're going to go to overtime with Mark Victor Hansen. So we're going to do a few minutes extra when you go to carlsterling.net. Okay, that's Carl with a K, carlsterling.net. You can go there, look for the episode with Mark Victor Hansen. You'll see his picture on the thumbnail on YouTube. Go there, and then you'll hear the rest. For the minute and 15 seconds we have left, Mark, anything you want to say as a takeaway message before we go to overtime for the people who are listening right now?
There's people out there that are lonely, they're despairing, and they're desperate, and they're despondent, and they're ready to commit suicide. I beg you, go to the library, get it free, get it at thrift books. I don't care where you get one of my books, borrow it from your neighbor. We're in 87% of the houses, so I'm not trying to sell you a book. Read one story and go to a public place like Famous Dave's gives these out, and like if I was alone and a lonely guy, I would read it, and all of a sudden you'd see me cry, and you'd come over and Carl say, is everything okay? So yeah, man, you got to read this story. And then
It's
you start
true.
talking and you won't be lonely anymore.
I love it. I love it. Okay, folks, so we're going to go to overtime. It's carlsterling.net. That's Carl with a K. Go there, check it out, because we're not done yet, even though this hour is up. Appreciate so much having you listening to us. And Mark, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
We'll see you in a minute for overtime. All right, everybody. We're in overtime with Mark Victor Hansen. Wow, man. I love what you said there. You know, I don't know who said this, but it wasn't me. Some people think I made this up. I didn't. I think it was Muhammad Ali. I'm not sure. It ain't about me, it's about we. But I have to take care of me. Because if I don't take care of me, I can't be my best for others. And I want to be my best. I want to do a good job here. I want to deliver results. I want to give them hope. Hope can take us a long ways. And so that's something that you deliver to people. I just kind of just want to organically go down this conversation of, let's say, advice. How about this? What keeps you motivated to find new stories and new ideas after so many years of having great success? You're still motivated to do this. It seems like maybe more than ever because you know how many, I don't know how many people you've helped, and you probably don't know either, but it's millions and millions and millions. And a little bit of hope can go miles and miles. It can go eons. So I commend you for that, first of all. You helped me a lot. But
Yeah,
how do you keep what drives you to keep helping being the best version of yourself for others and having them create the best, inspiring them to develop themselves uniquely to be their best for others? Because this is a really beautiful ripple effect. And I think if we all think about it this way as serving others, yeah, take care of yourself, serve others. I want to hear what drives you on this, Mark.
I'm driven by the inner man because I know that I'm here for one reason only, and that is to serve. And the way we think to serve best is to ask. And we ask ourselves, we ask others, ask God. There's only three channels, right? You said faith. So when I'm bankrupt and upside down, I said to God, okay, God, what does he want me to do? God doesn't answer. He said the opposite to me in my inner being and said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a professional speaker and talk to people that care about things that matter, make a life-changing difference. I went, oh, we. And I went down to my breakfast. I was living in Hicksville, Long Island, New York. You're up in Syracuse, right? So
Yeah,
you know where Hicksville is.
I do. I know
It's
exactly where it is.
yeah. So I'm sleeping in a sleeping bag in front of another guy's bedroom for 6 months. So I'm not styling and profiling, but I go to my roommates and I say, guys, you know, a young guy, not a cotton top white hair like me, not a Broadway star, not a celebrity, not a lawyer, doctor, that's just speaking and make money. And one of our guys said, yeah, John, it was his name. And he said, yeah, there's a kid 10 years older than you, 15 years older than you, speaking out in Hauppauge to all the realtors today. Now, real estate was at 18%, so it was in the bag. It was not working. It was dead.
Mhm.
And I walked in this room with 500 people, and they're all angry and upset and angry at the world, the government, inflation, and all that. Chip comes in there and is laughing, joking, chortling, coughing, winds the audience up so they were all beating on their chest before they walked out. I walk up to him and yeah, now it's going to be hard for you listeners to believe the next thing, but this is right before microphones, that little lapel mic. So he had
Oh
shouted the
yeah.
whole way, and his voice was like this. It was burned out. So I go up and I say, Chip, I got to ask. I'm going to ask you, will you go to lunch with me, please? I'm buying. I didn't have any money, but I'll buy him lunch, right? And
Yeah.
he said, what do you want, kid? I said, I want to do what you do. He said, oh, no, kid, go get a job. You don't want to do this. Anyhow, he told me how to do it. He said, stay out of real estate because I own the five boroughs. And he ultimately trained me, and we became best friends. Mastermind, where two get together, that power of 11, create a third new mind. Andrew Carnegie said the reason he became the richest man in the world is that, and you can watch him now on YouTube, talk about that in multiple movies, but he said, Jesus did his first miracle, water into wine in Cana, when he had 12 disciples all going the same direction. He said, I'll do that with the steel. I'll manufacture, market, and sell steel. And anyhow, so I masterminded with Chip. I let him do real estate, and he obviously made Barbara Cochran a billionaire on Shark Tank and all that. But he did it for me, and we went straight to the moon. I mean, I was doing those 4 talks a day to life insurance meetings, getting paid, having fun, doing a good thing. And then people start saying, your books really matter. You got to get going writing more books. If you got one book, I need your next book. And I really got after it. And then Jack and Dr. Canfield and I met we were talking at the Mandala thing, and we just become best friends. We had a Vulcan mind meld instantly, and
That's
you've got
beautiful.
somebody out there waiting for you. There should be nobody lonely, because hope, the Bible says, is an anchor for your soul. Your soul is your future beingness, as far as I'm concerned, is one of many definitions I've written for soul. And if you got a different one you like better, I'll listen to anything you say, Carl. or the audience can write into you and write into me. I'm okay with that too, and I'll answer. I promise everything you write me. The point is, it really gets exciting because once you open up to who you're supposed to be, the world's unlimited. And now as I said, we do the Ask book, and the front of it's Fable of Michaela, and now that's becoming a movie. It's going to become bigger than Harry Potter. It's been funded,
I can't
and
wait.
it's taken a decade to pull off. So all God's delays aren't God's denials. You'll pull off some stuff you can't even imagine you can pull off because every one of us has exponential ability. Remember, it's a seed in a zygote turned into trillion cells that you've got your heartbeat 72 times a minute. That's 37 million heartbeats a year. That's exponential. So
Yeah.
you're intrinsically exponential. And what you got to do is decide to direct the ship. You are the captain of your ship, the captain of your soul, the captain of your fate. Faith, and faith. I never said that before, but that sounded right. Is it
I
right?
love it. Yeah, that's a good one, man. It's a good one. Well, that's the thing. The thing about it is, as I think about all this stuff and I've read all these books and all that, none of this is rocket science. It's not rocket science. We don't have to be
No.
geniuses to figure this thing out. Thomas Edison, I don't know what he said. I know a few things, like he just said I'm no genius. Why do I have to know everything? I know people who know the answers to the things you're asking me, so I'll just ask them because then I'll have an answer for you. I don't want to remember all this stuff. I don't need to remember all this stuff. I want to focus on what I want to build and make and create. And I think that a lot of us get stuck in this thinking we have to know too much, or thinking, oh, this is a big one. We're not good enough. Why? Why? Well, that was me. That was me for a long time, the first 30 years. No, no, I can't do it. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve it. Well, that's not true anymore, thankfully. And, helping people is probably the greatest gratification I've ever received in my life, is, other than my family and my grandkids, is just the joy of being with them and great kids. Of course, my kids are great kids, both of them, and the grandkids, right? But watching people get better at moving, thinking, remembering, not falling down, having hope. I traveled all over the world teaching what I do, and this is about you, not me, but I'm just sharing, saying that this is a big deal, man. We a lot of we can if we pull out the stops, figure out, I guess, who it is we want to be, maybe what it is we want to do. That can change everything. Just knowing that, and then trying to put some action behind it. Game changer.
That's it. That's the underwriting. And let's go back to the first thing you said, is that instead of saying I'm not worthy, which is what the world teaches, you got to start to say I am worthy. I am important. I'm here to make a difference that makes a difference that has a lasting, impactful difference. And people that really succeed have gigantic goals, like they're called moonshots, right? Or BHOGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. And when I said I would sell 1 billion books, people went, this guy's out to, and that's, by the way, one of the reasons we got turned down 144 times. It's my fault, not Jack's, right? I just want to be clear on this. I wrote down, can you imagine? I'm going in now. I've been paid $1 million by Random House to write, a bunch of books like 1 Minute Millionaire and all that, which I think I showed you. And
Yeah.
everybody ought to become a millionaire just because it's time to do it. And it's 2 books in one. But I say, look, there's a million ways to make a million. There's one right, perfect, easy, acceptable way to you. I don't
Hmm.
care how you do it. You can make light bulbs. You can make computers. You can, you can go, like one of the books we just finished was Elevate, which is the #1 selling audiobook now because the guy was dyslexic and the teacher said you'll never make it, to Tommy Mello, and then he fixed the garage door and then another one and then hired a bunch of other people. And now last year he did $650 million. Two of his guys
Oh,
made over $1 million. This year he'll do 1 billion, and he's in 50 states with A1 garage door, and he's figured out a
oh,
new garage door spring instead of lasting 5 years, it lasts 20 years. Every one of us can do a little improvement. And let me just give you what an entrepreneur, a business person is. They find a problem, and all of you have problems. So you
yeah.
find a problem, you fix it, then you scale it. That means you do a whole lot more of it. And then you make a massive profit, which is what, Jesus said, the labor is worth his or her hire. So you're worthy of getting paid for creating results, right? Because it's done unto you according to your works, according to your results. So what are the results that you want to generate? I want to generate results of creating readership for leadership, because the
Oh,
world is desperately out of leaders that think right, talk right, act
oh,
right, get the right results right here, right now.
that's a powerful statement right there. Readership for leadership. Um,
Yeah,
so once in a while with my dyslexia and my ADHD, which I'm proud of at this point, this is not going to stop me from anything. I just sent a text
good.
to Elizabeth, who works with me the other day. Just said because I know she wasn't feeling good. How are you? I spelled you YOU. I didn't. I did it UOY with a question mark. Just sent it that. This is the way I type. I knew what I meant, and she did too, which is actually kind of funny. But I can't use it as an excuse. But what you just said kind of goes back to this thing I still haven't really asked you the right way. And I thought about it a lot, and I still haven't figured out how to ask it. Really tapping into what it is we're capable of doing. I think that the world is in we can say it's in a toxic place. Or is it? I
Yep.
mean, my world is not toxic. People talk about, and I'm not going to get into like whose side I'm on for the election coming up. I'm not going to talk about is it Trump, but who's better. I mean, I think is it, I'm sorry, Kamala or Trump, or who's better. I just think like, where am I? The only reason that I'm better off now is because I did the work to make it better now. So if it wasn't better, I still would have done the work, and I can't blame it on the politics. Now, maybe there's some relevance in that too, but it seems like much more of this really lies within our decisions and our mindset
Totally.
and our actions, not the
Right.
government, because I can't let the government, wait on me because they won't, and they won't give me what I need to do what I want to do and succeed and be wealthy, let's say. That ain't gonna happen. So I wish there was a way, and I know there is a way in my own thinking, but to convey a message, if you have any words of wisdom on this, seeing as how we're on overtime and there's no timer going now, so I don't have to interrupt my train of thought, is do you have any thoughts about how we can separate toxicity, even though it can be there, and not let that toxic social media news, bad news, mass shootings, which is a terrible tragedy, but it still can't dictate my life. Neither can Trump, neither can Kamala. I mean, how do you look at these things as far as you, let's say, or you as a person, me as a person, choosing our best quality life, choosing our actions, because we still have free will. I always go back to free will. I'm not going to
You
blame
got to
anybody
direct
for
your
anything.
free will. Great, great question, Carl. You got to direct your free will. And when I went bankrupt, it was because I was reading all the bad news fit to print. I couldn't get enough bad TV. And what you got to do is you got to do a hiatus on negativity and say, look, I'll watch the review shows on Sunday morning with whoever, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's Fahi or Maria, whatever you want to do, but close down and limit yourself to 1 hour. But make sure your first input in the morning is some positive, uplifting book, audio, or music. And then last thing before you go to sleep, the first thing you ask is, how do you know how do you get your energy to go to 100% peak? Here's what happens. We teach in our book, Ask, right there, Ask, British Redeemer's Destiny, 101 times before you go to sleep. After the dogs have stopped barking, the kids are put to bed, the spouse doesn't need anything, the telephone's not going to ring, and you go 101 times, God, what is your destiny for me? 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 Now you got to be ready because God's going to tell you, and God's very uncomfortable. So God wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're going to go, I'll remember in the morning. You won't remember. So,
Yeah.
like you said, you got to have a pen and paper next to it because
Oh,
ideas are like wet, slippery
absolutely.
fish. And whatever your destiny is, you got to get your little butt out of bed and go turn on the light, not wake up your spouse or whoever, and write down whatever your destiny is. And that's what I said. My destiny was to become a top money making professional speaker. And then I wrote down the crazy one. I'm going to become world's best selling author, which is now I am. I suppose have 500, almost 600 million books sold, and Guinness Book of Records, and 59 times number one, and 2 billion at retail, and a
I
billion in
know.
licensing.
It's
And you just
amazing.
write down yeah, and then you read biographies and autobiographies, which I've got one out that I'd love you to read mine if you haven't, You all can get a copy of Relentless. It's written
Oh,
by one of
great
the
book.
writers of our time. You read this?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
written by
I
Mitzi
have
Perdue.
Relentless
Now
on
she,
audio. Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
do a
there's
lot
a
of audio, but yeah, that's a great book.
yeah. Anyhow, Mitzi Perdue does 22 million chickens a week. She owns Purdue Chicken for a little company called Costco. I think you've heard of them. I'll just
Yeah.
bet on it.
Yeah, they're
So
right down the road from me here.
anyhow, yeah. They're and same here. And but she is a great friend. She's 84. I go on to. There's what she looks like today. I
Oh, no
think. Isn't that
kidding.
cute?
Oh,
She's just
wow.
so
She
she's.
looks
We're gonna
great
get her
too.
on your show.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'd
she
love to
does.
have her on the show.
Her husband Frank Purdue died, 17 years ago. And then their best friend that they dated and mealed with, another guy, Ken Roman, who runs Ogilvy Mather at 94. His wife died. She writes him a note, said, "I'm so sorry of your loss. I know what it feels like because I lost Frank." He said, "Well, next time you're in New York," she lives in Maryland, "come by." They fell in love. Now you got an 84-year-old living and loving, enjoying and being with, traveling everywhere with a 94-year-old. Both are working full tilt buggy
I love
because
it.
you cannot retire from something to nothing. I wrote a book behind me, Art Linkletter, and I wrote How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life.
Oh my
Everyone
gosh.
remembers kids say the darndest thing. People are
I
funny. House.
love Art Linkletter. I remember him when I was a kid.
He
Love that guy.
anyhow, we wrote the book when he was 96. So you're supposed to, right. The goal here is if you're made in the image and likeness of God, then there's three C's. You're here to create, here to contribute. And you only feel good if you're still making a contribution. So if you go from something to nothing, I don't need to work, then I got a million, 10 million, how many? No, that's not the deal.
No.
Jane and John, you got to create, contribute, and then be charitable.
Ah.
Give somebody something that, even if it's a smile, a pat on the back, encouragement. Like, can I do one more story?
Oh, please. Yes.
Yeah, so we've got six grandkids that we love, cherish, and adore, and they sleep over, and they all learn stuff from us, and they got to read the books we give them, and it's wonderful. But our little 12-year-old, last year he was student body president, 800 little girls going Everett, 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 and every day he wants to be a Phoenix Sun. That's a basketball player for
Sure.
those internationally that may not know what a Sun is. Anyhow, and he does 103-point shots a day because his goal is
Oh,
Michael Jordan and LeBron and all those guys. He knows everything about anything about basketball, straight A student. So this year at seventh grade, he goes out for basketball and they didn't pick him. And he got brokenhearted because there's so many kids in this giant school he's in, the Leadership Academy, and they're all good. So, we're cheering him on and say, look, failure is just an event. It's a feedback loop. It's not permanent. Well, today he got chosen as the manager of the basketball team that he personally has to know the strategy and everything and
oh,
run it and play if another kid doesn't show up. So he plays every time it's up more than any other kid. And it's amazing because it was a temporary setback, but it's really a set forward. And we couldn't see it when it happened. But when I said to him a year ago, Evie, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, at 18, Grampy, I'm going to make 30 million a year and be a Phoenix Sun. I said, then what? He said, then I'm going to manage the team. I said, then what? He said, then I'm going to buy them. I said, son, you know how much that is? He said, 3.8 billion. I said, whose money are you buying that out of? Because it didn't mine. He said, no, I'll have the money by then, Grammy. You don't have to work. Now he doesn't understand how much a billion is. That's a serious amount of jack. But
yeah.
it is a wonderful. Isn't it nice that a kid has goals? That's why everyone, like we said in the last show, 10 minutes a day, read with your family. Shut off the TV, shut off the radio, shut off the newspaper, shut off every kind of media, TikTok, whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
X. I don't care what you shut off, but just read and then talk about what you're reading. Everybody will have a mind full of compounding ideas that'll make them exponentially more successful, happier, fulfilled, and full of delight.
Yeah. I think that's those are some of the greatest words of wisdom. And they parallel indirectly something else that I was talking about with Dr. Terry Walls a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago. And I've gotten to know Terry not that long ago. We met a couple years. Are you familiar with Terry Walls? She's wrote the Walls Protocol, right?
Yeah.
Um, Came back from, being in a wheelchair 20 years ago to now she runs and jogs, and she started doing that a long time ago. So her idea of making change in life, whether it's an intervention on, let's say, nutrition, maybe a drug issue, a therapy mode you want to go for that might be out of the norm, like we do here, because I'm the guy who does the stuff nobody else does. But bottom line is that an individual, a lot of times, it's not going to work the same as if you get a family involved. So a family intervention, a family acceptance, and then a family mission to move forward has so much power behind it. And when you talk about read 10 minutes a day with your family, shut everything off, read, and then talk about it. In a way, that's very similar because you have a family involvement. You can make family moves together, goals together, strategies. And so you got these two tracks, hers and yours are paralleling here. I think I never thought about reading 10 minutes a day with anybody, but I'm going to start doing it.
Yeah.
I
And then
love
talk
that.
about it. And then the other thing is one of the dyads that you got to do, and we used to do this in our classes. We had up 4,000 people a weekend, 40 weekends a year at our Enlightened Millionaire Institute. We had two people sit together. We were there for 3 or 4 days at a time. But 50 times in a row, I ask you one question. What do you want? And Carl, you got to have a new answer 50 times. By the
Oh,
time you hit 50, we know what you really want. Yeah, you want a new car and you want a house. You want your wife wants flooring in your kitchen and blah, 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 and a trip to Croatia or whatever it is. But pretty soon you find out the intangibles. Well, I want to have great integrity in my life. I want to have real ethics. I want to build a foundational business, a legacy. I want to have generational wealth, whatever it is that you want. And suddenly you go, that's what I really want. And now you wake up beating on your chest like Tarzan or Tarzette in the morning or Superman, and you really go for it. And by the way, I just got to tell you, last Saturday we spent the evening dining with Superman, Dean Cain. It was just,
oh,
he,
really? Oh my
he
gosh, I
became
love
our
that
new
guy.
best friend. Yep.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So well, we can talk about this when we finish shortly. You talk about, I just have a couple more things if you don't mind going over.
Anything, anything.
All right. Well, there are three areas of asking, if I'm remembering
Yep.
correctly from the book. Ask
Yep. Yep.
the bridge from your dreams to your
Destiny.
destiny. You talk about asking yourself, asking others, asking God. And you kind of just went over this a little bit, especially you talking about like at nighttime before bed and everything's done, shut off. You can finally shut off your brain, but you can also just focus it on this asking. Do you mind, though, going through each of those just a little bit about each one, asking yourself, how do you approach that one?
Okay, so I'll use my wife's story because I did mine already. And my wife, came here divorced. She was a young woman, 21 already, was superstar in school, so she graduated early at 17 and had a 5-year-old boyfriend, and they decided to have a baby, and then he just wasn't a good provider, so she schismed, comes here to Arizona with a baby on her hip. And gets food stamps, goes in the food stamp place, is ready to give the food stamps, and says, "Wait a second." Her question to herself was, God, am I doing the best I can do? And all of a sudden she said no. And she was almost resistant to give the lady the food stamps. And she said, I can do something. So she'd heard on the radio, you could go to Kelly's Services. I don't know if they exist anymore, and they'll get a job. And she started doing jobs as working in a lawyer's office, working in a sales job, this or that. Ends up, long story short, she learned that she was a great saleswoman. She became the number one real estate salesperson here. She became the number one model for Ford Motor Agency. And
Uh,
once she's a model and doing little TV commercials, she's in SAG, Screen Actors Guild, and she and her baby had the best insurance ever. And now her life just unfolds and unfolds. And Phoenix is a little city, so once you become a who here, you are a who, right?
yeah.
If you're a big city like LA or New York, nah, too many people. You can't pull it very much unless you're a giant, giant. But here, little people are big people because everybody knows everybody.
Alice
Does that
Cooper lives
make sense?
there.
Yeah. So first of all, she asked herself, is there something I should be doing? And then God said, yeah. And then she said, well, I'll go ask at Kelly Girls. And they gave her a bunch of jobs. And she passed a real estate test. And then she asked at the biggest company, Continental Homes, became the number one person at Continental Homes. So you ask yourself, what am I supposed to, what is my destiny? Because everyone's got a destiny. Then you say, God, what is my destiny? And God will say, well, what do you think it is? Because your inner knower knows. You came in here with a little s, and you act like when you have a sense of unworthiness, it's because you're dealing with a little sense of self. But there's a big S, a big sense of self. Your spiritual sense of self knows why you came here. Now, if you don't believe that, 20,000 videos on YouTube called on near-death experiences. Everybody that dies go to the other side and see whatever they're expecting to see, whether it's Jesus or Moses or God or Buddha, right? They all come back the same and say, they said I wasn't ready. I made a decision to be here and I'm supposed to do something and now I'm back and I got to do it before I get to go to the other side, right? We're all on a plan and
Yeah.
some of us get anesthetized to the plan. And if you aren't on your plan, you'll become an alcoholic, a drug addict, a sex addict. There's 18 kinds of addictions, I think is the number. And the point is, all of us need to be passionately on purpose to a destination that matters, that only we can fulfill, because all of us have these great, unique abilities. But you got to remember, you got to ask yourself, what am I supposed to do? What's my destiny? Ask God, and then you ask others. And if you don't know what your talent is, ask 10 of your friends, what talent do you see that I got that you think is unique that no one else has got? They'll tell you. And they see more in you than you see in yourself generally.
Yeah, that's true. And I didn't learn that well, here's how I learned it. People said, I saw things in you long before you saw them in yourself. I said, what are you talking about? And they would tell me. I said, I just had no idea. But that's a great way to go about it, Mark, is ask others. I just that one I hadn't thought of. I love that. I mean, I did because of your book, but before having that, I hadn't really thought about this whole asking others. So I hope for listeners out there, you're really taking this in and taking this information and thinking real deep because these things can be game changers, just
Yep.
game changers. This can change the complete game. This can give you a 180. You can start going a completely different direction. And everyone listening, if you're a regular listener, you know I was a heavy drinker. That was my coping. Uh, uh, I ate a lot too, but that was 70 pounds ago and 16 years ago. So one day I just put down the bottle because I knew it wasn't going to get me to my destiny. It would get me to an early grave though, because I was so heavy and had all kinds of health problems. But it was
In a
not the
way.
easiest thing I ever did either. I mean, I did it, and now I've never felt better than I do now. And this isn't about me, but I'm just going to tell you, I can say, and a lot you if you're listening and you know my story. I've been there in the obese category. I've been there in the health problem arena where I was really destined for an early death. I've been there with drinking way too much and making very bad decisions that hurt people. They hurt my family, they hurt others. But I am bigger than that. You have to be, we talked about it last week on the show, folks. Be bigger than those things that you allow to control your life. Be bigger than the bottle, the drug, the people who say you can't do stuff. You got to get away from them if it's possible. I mean, I'm going off and preaching and rambling, but is we have to take control, and we can. We have free will. It's just sometimes we're scared. There's a lot of things that scared me. Couldn't put down the bottle for a long time. Oh, I'm not really drunk. I'm not really drunk. I'm not an alcohol addict. A joke. I was kidding myself all the time. But I had to say that. Sorry, Mark. I had to go into saying that because I think a lot of people will resonate with that in conjunction with what you said.
Absolutely. I've
It,
got no issues. I've talked at every church with AA brothers, a Bill, GA, SA, all the A's, all the anonymous. I have more anonymous friends than you can believe.
yeah. Well, I had to tell you, I always say this too. If I can do it, you can do it. If you're
And
in
we
trouble,
are
you
both
want anyone to
encouraging
talk
you.
to, you call me up. You got my numbers, folks. 315-935-7488, carlsterling.com, Carl with a K. Email me, text me. We'll talk. So, Mark, is there anything more you'd like to talk about?
One last thing. I
Sure.
wrote a book called You Have a Book in You, and everyone has one. You get it for about $10, I think is what they cost at YouTube or thrift books or wherever you get it. But because you've got a story in you, and the richest place in the world is a graveyard. It's full of businesses that didn't happen, songs didn't happen, inventions didn't make it, and books that didn't get written. And your book is unique. It'll help somebody that nothing else can help, and it's something you leave as a legacy. And so that's why we chose to write books and distribute books. And obviously, I'm a bypass marketer. We figure out how to help you sell books in ways that nobody else has ever thought of. And that's why we sell more books, just because it's possible to do it, right? Because we've got all things are possible, and all things are possible in the book business. And if you've got a book in you and you can afford to pay us, we're here to ghostwrite it for you. We'll listen to you, find out your perfect story, and we'll take it, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, or if you're really well off and can afford $200,000 for a biography, we'll help you do your biography. Because here's what I say about a
Oh,
biography,
that's great.
Carol,
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
biography is the only lasting gift of love that you give your family, your friends, and the future that is permanent. In other
Wow.
words, you say,
Yeah.
well, I got 100 million or I got a billion or 10 million, whatever it is, I'm going to give that. No, that'll ruin them because
Yeah.
that entitles them. And what you want to do is empower them. And I'm
Yeah.
just reading right now 38 letters that Rockefeller wrote to his kid, John D. Rockefeller. It's great. You can buy it for $3 at thrift book. So I'm not trying to sell anyone else's book, but the letters are profoundly. He says, here's what I expect of you. And he does 38 letters of expectation. And obviously, Rockefeller's name has gone through history. Andrew Carnegie did the same thing. He gave us the library, 4,817 of them. But he said, if I give you the library, you got to increase the amount of books 10% a year. You got to increase the amount of people that come to the library 10% a year, or I'm going to take it back to the Andrew Carnegie Foundation. Is that cool?
Oh,
This is
that's
what we call expectations,
yeah.
right? And what happens is you need to know what you. My grandkids know that I expect greatness out of them. Rose Kennedy wrote every one of the kids. I expect you to be a world leader. I don't expect
Wow.
you to be a numbskull, a nothing, an alcoholic, and empowered and go spend $1 billion. And we see one of the guys doing that right now, not being a numbskull, just the opposite, saying, "Hey, look, I'm going to bring health back to America." Right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I tell you, when we're done here shortly, I just want to pick your brain for maybe 2 minutes about
Yeah,
books.
sure.
I've written
Ditto.
three, so I want to ask you about my fourth one.
Good.
Oh, by the way, folks, this is a platform where I can also promote. So if you go to carlsterling.com, you'll find out that I do a lot of work with people with movement disorders, neurological disorders, and we help you to restore movement, cognition, memory, multitasking to the best of our abilities. I do have three books out there, and they're all on the website under the books tab. So carlsterling.com, Carl with a K, as is this interview after it airs, actually before it airs, but certainly after it's going to be on the podcast link, the WSYR link, iHeart link. Go there, check it out, and you can hear, well, you're already there if you're listening. So, Mark, it's been such a pleasure to have you with me. It's just the greatest. You're the greatest.
I'm honored and thankful and humbled with that. I want to serve everyone greatly. The greatest among the last thing the big guy said was the greatest amongst you is servant of all. That's who I want. I want to serve billions and uplift them and enchant them and say, look, there's no reason for poverty. Let's all go to prosperity. There's no reason for sickness. Let's all go to health, like you teach in this show. Let's all go from have-notness to have-ness of whatever it is that you need have-ness of. And unfortunately, addiction is too much of something that you shouldn't have any of.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people with addictive tendencies, I think, and we've talked about this on the show a little bit. We have more of that coming up with a couple people in the near future, but I find, for me, it just works best if I harness my addictive tendencies towards productive um, tasks and chores and goals. Let's say goals and work.
Right.
I am totally addicted to learning and educating and
Me
getting
too.
world-renowned, first-class, legit, top-notch guests like yourself on the program. I can't settle for anything, and they don't have to be world famous. They just need to be really, they need to know what they're talking about and have something to offer. And you certainly are very much in that category. But this is my addiction now, one of them. The other ones are coffee and hot peppers. So there you go. Oh man, those ghost peppers and the Carolina Reapers, baby. Gotta
Yep.
love it. Mark, if people want to get more information about you, the work you do, maybe if they want to write a book, if they want to buy your books, where would you direct them?
Okay, so if you want to write a book, go to markvictorhansenlibrary.com. It's a publishing house, our publishing company, and we're equal to all the biggest publishing houses in the world, but we just help you get from zero to hero with your book. And if they just want more stuff on me, markvictorhansen.com. And if you want a bunch of free books, you go to thebookask.com and we give you free books electronically. I mean, it just, I want everyone to succeed and lead. And whether you buy a book of mine or not does not mean whether I eat. So you don't have to worry about my future days are paid for. And what Carl and I want is all of your future days paid for you so you can go get passionately on purpose about whatever you're supposed to accomplish. And I've got 10 major things I want to accomplish. Like I'm part of a company called Remining Corporation out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. We're going to take all the garbage, all the trash, turn it into cash, metal to metal, glass to glass, water back to water. We're not short of anything in America, contrariwise to what all the imbecilic negative media people say. That's why I say you got to shut off all the negative
Yeah,
media
yeah.
and listen to somebody positive that knows what they're talking about, that is figuring out how to do it, not how not to do it. That's why I love Elon Musk so much. Yeah,
Yeah, he's a true visionary of
yeah.
our generation. He's really special. Zero to hero. That's beautiful. I love that one. Zero to
Thank you.
hero. Well, listen, we're going to put links to all those that Mark just mentioned. We'll put them in the description of all platforms where you hear this. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And thank you again, Mark, for joining me. Just stay with me for just a minute when we're done. But if
Yes.
you don't mind, folks, can't say how much I appreciate your support for this show. Our feedback every week is getting better and better and better. And really, all I want to do is spread the word of different things you can do and so many things you can do to improve the quality of your life. That's what it's all about, man. If we're going to be here, let's live well. Let's live really well. Let's live happy. So, thanks everyone. Thanks, Mark. Have a great day, folks. See you
Thanks,
next
everybody.
week.